All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining a brand new session of our Sochology Edu series. We have a very special guest and topic today. My name is Melissa Bungish, and I'll be your host. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host and technical director, Amna Nazir. Just some housekeeping before we get started. Please mute yourself during the session. We do love getting questions, so please type them into the chat, and we'll bring them up during or towards the end of the session. Our topic for today is differences between going from 0 to 1 and from 1 to 2. How can you take your product and in turn your product career to the next level? What are some of the examples and concepts that can help you think differently about your product? To speak to that topic, we're excited to have Alejandro Simkievich join us today. Alejandro is an experienced freelance product manager and founder who has worked in both B2B and B2C companies with products in all stages of the product lifecycle. He has an MBA from MIT. He's served as both a product leader and an individual contributor and is passionate about building and shipping products. He specializes in both consumer apps and data products and has a background in machine learning. Currently, Alejandro is the founder of Produkando, a product that helps founders and product managers write documents to support strategic product initiatives and validate key assumptions. Thank you, Alejandro, for joining us today, and I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks so much, Mudassir. I'm very happy to be here with you today and having the opportunity to talk with so many PMs. I assume mostly from Pakistan. So I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome.
Cool. So this presentation is about the differences between going from 0 to 1 and from 1 to 2. And it's something that I thought about for a while when I did my first project, going from 1 to 2 and seeing how different it was from my previous experience of going from 0 to 1. So apologies. Let's get started. And we would like to do this as interactively as possible. So feel free to drop questions. Mudassir and Amna will be moderating, so they will make the questions. They will ask questions to me. And also, before we start, I would like to ask the audience if you can write in the chat where you guys are from, where people are from mostly, and whether you're already in product management, you want to break into product management soon, you're in the first years on the job, etc. I would love to hear that. And also, if you want to write the type of applications that you work on, also would love to hear about that. In terms of the agenda, I thought we can start discussing what is 0, what is 1, and what is 2 before we actually discuss the differences. Then we go through the typical challenges of getting from 0 to 1. Then we discuss the differences, the challenges and the differences of going from 1 to 2. And then we focus on a summary. And in the end, I just wanted to add a quick note about Produkando, the company and product I'm working on right now, but also want to leave time for Q&A towards the end. But again, if you have some questions, feel free to drop them while I'm talking, and then either Mudassir or Amna will let me know, and then I can answer them.
Sounds great.
Awesome. So okay. So next slide. What does it mean to go from 0 to 1? What's 0? What's 1? And the phrase from 0 to 1 was coined by Peter Thiel. He wrote a book about that in 2014. And for those of you who may not know, so Peter Thiel is a very well-known investor. He was a co-founder of PayPal, and he had the vision to invest early in Facebook, SpaceX, and Palantir Technology. So obviously he's very well-known in Silicon Valley, very well-respected. And 0 to 1 is a concept about many things, really. It includes innovation, disruption, but the one thing I will focus on, and I want to highlight for the purpose of this presentation, is one aspect of it, which is going from nothing, that's 0, so 0 is nothing, and product market fit would be 1. So that's going from 0 to 1, from nothing to product market fit. So now I'm moving to the next presentation, and let's discuss a bit what product market fit means. Here you see a graph from Reforge, which is a company that provides education. It has some great courses about product management and growth. And they put together this graph, which summarizes what product market fit is. The blue line that you see is value added over time. And then the straight line that you see is the threshold that consumers have to accept the product, or the average threshold. So as we start a company, build a product, and start adding more value over time, at a certain point in time, we deliver more value than consumers require to use and buy the product. And then we can say that we're in product market fit zone. So in terms of the chart above, you could say that in the green zone, we're delivering more value than consumers require. We're in this sweet spot, product market fit zone. But if we're anywhere below the straight line in the red zone, it means we haven't achieved product market fit. It will be difficult to sell the product. It will be, people will not talk about it, will not recommend it to friends, etc., etc. So in a way, simplified, again, very simplified, product market fit is a state that we reach when we provide enough value to customers, and we go through this threshold, the minimum quality product that the market will accept. And once we get to product market fit, the product can, in theory, can sustain a viable business. It generates consistent revenue, and we have a loyal customer base. So now I'm going to transition to the next slide. And then let's switch for a second to going from 1 to 2. So again, 1 to 2 is a metaphor. What it represents is we have achieved product market fit at some point in time. Maybe we're still in that zone of product market fit, but we want to reach another state where the fundamentals of the product are stronger than they are right now. And to continue to use the same metaphor, it's as though that straight line, the product market fit threshold, moves upwards for many reasons. It could be that consumers' expectations shifted, there's a new entrant, etc. But the important thing is that product market fit is a dynamic thing. It doesn't stay static. And the company maybe failed to create additional value over time, and now it finds itself either in the in the yellow zone, or maybe in the green zone, but too close to the yellow zone. And it's not a comfortable place to be in. There's usually an external threat causing the product to slide back into the no product market fit zone. It doesn't have to be that way, but there's usually competition involved. Somebody that is maybe doing a better job or finding a way to attract more customers. And usually the company recognizes the situation, and there's a formal initiative to increase value and go back to the product market fit zone. So again, I'm using this going 1 to 2 for a specific setting, for a specific situation. I'm not talking about in general, continue to improve the product after product market fit. I'm talking more about, there's some threat, there's some situation that really requires us to improve the fundamentals of the product and make them stronger. And now I'm moving to the next slide, and we go back to the agenda. So let's discuss for a second, what are the challenges of going from 0 to 1, of achieving product market fit? First of all, I'm sure many of you have been through this, and it's one of the toughest challenges ever for product managers, founders. It's the ultimate challenge, tends to be. Some people say it's not necessarily more difficult, but it's more risky. I think that's a philosophical issue, but it's really very demanding. One thing I wanted to highlight is that the idea of product market fit, it talks about the product, it talks about the market or the demand. It's useful, but it also underscores the importance of other elements of the traditional marketing mix, which is pricing, which is distribution, which is promotion or marketing, which are really as important as a product in terms of getting that sustainable demand for the product. So when we talk about product market fit, we're not only talking about inherent product issues. It could be also something in combination with pricing, with distribution, or with promotion. And for us, product managers, it's also important to keep our ego in check, and not everything depends on the product. And commercial success depends on a lot of other things. And when it comes to going from 1 to 2, we're going to work probably with a cross-functional team, because it's not just the product that's the issue.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, Alejandro, right? Like, you could have an amazing product, but you're just asking too much for it, right? So you're not hitting that price point, and so you won't do well, or you don't have a great mechanism for distributing it, or you're not promoting it. So even though it is a fantastic product that's solving a great need, but people just don't know about it, right? So I think what you highlighted just really underscores how important these things are to consider for product market fit.
Exactly. If we have time towards the end, I'll talk about, there's one book I've been reading recently, which is Hit Makers, the mechanics of creating hits, which is very interesting in that regard. But let's leave that for later if we have time.
Sounds great.
Okay, so this is a simplification, and you will not find this in any book. It's something that I came up with. Again, simplification. To those of you who find this useful, take it. If not, of course, feel free to go with another framework. But when we go from 0 to 1, sometimes we have usually 3 types of challenge. I summarize the challenge in 2. So on the one hand, we have the technical challenge, and on the other hand, we have the consumer adoption challenge. So some products are technically predictable, and some products are technically unpredictable. Let's call it that way. And the products that are technically unpredictable, it's how you're going to solve a certain problem is difficult to pinpoint looking forward. So in retrospective, it's obvious, but going forward, you don't know how you're going to solve the problem. If you think about every invention that we have made as humans in the past 200 years, people didn't know initially how a light bulb could actually remain ignited for a period of time, and they have to try out 1,000 ways to do that. When it comes to software, that's for the most part no longer the case, interestingly, but some types of products do face that challenge. And obviously ChatGPT is a recent example. How you could get a program to interact with you using human language has been an issue we've been trying to solve for the last 60 years, non-trivial, until somebody in the end find a way, and now we have the best chatbot that we ever had. Google, when it came out, it was also pretty revolutionary. Most of you probably are too young, but before Google, internet search was directory-based, which means manually somebody decided that we're going to have 10 directories. We click on this, then we go to the next, etc. And here came Google indexing the entire web and allowing people to just search instead of organizing things as if we had a computer directory. Those 2 products were technically unpredictable. Now, it's easy to say in retrospective, well, if you solve this problem, consumer adoption takes care of itself. It may not be the case, but sometimes if you solve a very, very difficult problem, consumer adoption is not the main challenge. The main challenge could be solving that very difficult problem. And then we have software products that are technically predictable. It doesn't mean that they're easy, but they're predictable. If we need to build an API, we may take 1 month or 2 months. So basically, we know how to build it. If we need to build a UI, same thing. We know how to do it. So from a technical standpoint, they're predictable, even though having good engineers is very important to build solid products. But from a consumer adoption perspective, they're a bit unpredictable. What does it mean? These products tend to have an it that is hard to pinpoint looking forward. What is it really that makes this product stick with users? And if you think about what that it is, in the end, it's a relationship between the consumer and the product and the marketing mix. It's a bit unpredictable. Looking forward, which combination will do the trick? And I think that most of us work. Sorry, let me go back one sec. Most of us work on the upper right quadrant. The interesting thing about software is that it became a consumer product. It's not that different from cereal. So I'm not sure what would be a typical consumer product in Pakistan or other countries, but imagine something that everybody eats, everybody consumes, a typical mass production product. And software, since the advent of the internet, has become a consumer product, right? It's not the highly technical people who use software. Everybody uses software. Grandfathers, grandmothers, everybody uses software. So most of us tend to work on the upper right quadrant, where technically we have a predictable challenge, but from the standpoint of consumer adoption, the challenge is unpredictable. Now, usually when we go from 0 to 1, we usually focus on a single important need or a single important customer problem. Let's pick an example, SurveyMonkey. The problem is I need to interview people online many years ago. It was not that straightforward. Miro, also a few years ago, I needed a whiteboard to collaborate online. It's not 1,000 things, it's not even 2 things, it's usually 1 thing. We have also in the theory that the product can be either a painkiller or it could be a vitamin, but both of them address a single problem or a single need. A painkiller is a product that addresses some urgent need, whereas a vitamin is something that is nice to have but can be postponed. Some time ago, the theory said, well, it's better to build a painkiller because people need it urgently. But then over time, people realized that vitamins you can build very powerful habits around vitamins. So they could be great products. If you think about Facebook, Instagram, they don't satisfy any urgent need. It's a nice to have, but people, grow habits around those products, and they can be incredibly profitable.
Absolutely.
Now, remember this. We're tackling usually a big need or problem. Whether it's urgent or not, it's mostly one big need or problem. And this chart summarizes a bit what these startups going from 0 to 1 is all about, product market fit. So usually most of us, the first time, we tend to be naive. I certainly was very naive, and we think that we put together a plan, and then we outline what the product mix should be, and then we get to the finish line, which is product market fit. But in reality, what happens is that this is an obstacle course, and there's 1,000 things that we have to adjust. And one thing that happens a bit, also a good metaphor is we are a bit in the dark. We're in a dark room. We have lots of unknowns. We have some knowns. Hopefully, at least we understand the problem we're trying to solve. And if we don't, we go back to that phase and we really interview our potential customers, or maybe we have the problem ourselves, so we know the problem well. But there are many unknowns. What will be the end solution? What are the success drivers? What are the distribution channels? How should we tell the story? What's the pricing, etc.? And then obviously we iterate, and usually what you see here in this chart, what you see is build, measure, and learn. But I changed that on purpose to do, observe, and learn, because again, I don't want to focus solely on the product. So maybe it's not build anything, but you have to do something. And I added observe instead of measure, because at this stage, usually you don't have that much quantitative feedback. And sometimes it's a matter of observing some qualitative feedback and extrapolating. But we have to go through this thousands of times until hopefully, finally, we get to a point where it's no longer dark, but we can see there are important knowns. So what becomes known is what are the success levers and what is the pricing, distribution, promotion, product mix that actually work. There's still some unknowns. For instance, we may not know what comes next, etc., but we know a great deal compared to the initial situation when we got started. So now I'm switching to the next slide. I'll put together a real example. This is something I'm working right now. So one of the things I've noticed working for a company like Zalando, that Zalando has a lot of Amazon alums, so it takes over many of the Silicon Valley practices, is that product managers in these companies write a lot of documents. So whenever you have to write down what the strategy for product is, you write down who are your customers, what is the problem, how are you going to measure success, what is your vision for the product, what is the strategy, etc. So what I thought about, okay, what if I build a tool where there are certain templates that help you complete these documents? And the tool has a bit of gamification and AI to complete text using well-known interfaces from OpenAI. And the problem I'm trying to solve is, okay, if we don't take the time to sit down, write our assumptions, and identify them, we can easily fall into the build trap. We just build stuff, but without addressing any real problem. And there are alternatives. You can use Google Docs, so you don't need a whole app to do this. There's also some horizontal template solutions like Notion for every type of template. It doesn't have to be a product manager template. So the challenges and the unknowns to me at this point in time is, if you already use Google Docs, I mean, will you see the value of switching to another tool? You're already doing it on Google Docs. Another question is, well, if people use Notion, why would you want to change to a vertical tool for templates? And if you don't use them, so if you don't use them because it's complicated, you have to struggle with a blank page syndrome, etc. Will an app make any difference? Because maybe if you don't use them, you won't use them with or without app. And then what's good enough for a product that assuming some people are willing to use it. And then the question is, well, who's likely to use the product? Let's assume that people who are either breaking into product management in the first years are more likely to use a product, which you find out after you launch. Then what happens is, okay, should this include more education material so that you not only describe what a template is, what is it for, in which context you use it, etc., etc. One interesting thing that I found so far is the people who use it the most were not product managers, were founders, people who were data scientists who usually don't do this type of thing, don't know how to do it step by step, and they say, well, it's interesting. I have a product idea and I'm not a product manager, so I'm going to use it. And maybe that's the case, and maybe those people are really the early adopters, still finding it out.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, I guess I can't speak for all founders, but I think most founders, when they do start a product, they are essentially the product manager without a kind of formal product manager background, right? So they are looking to kind of create a product function, but something like this can help with that. Yeah.
Sorry, I was my kids here.
I'm surprised mines are so quiet. So usually they're pretty, yeah. So please continue.
Yeah, so now let's talk about going from 1 to 2, which is a different type of challenge. And towards the end, I want to highlight that if you take one thing from this presentation, is that there's no silver bullet when it comes to product management. There's no one approach that will work in every single situation. But let's talk a little bit about going from 1 to 2. Here's an interesting metaphor. I'm not sure if some of you are know about it. I'm interested in this stuff. But it's the Titanic. So you all know probably the Titanic sunk more than 100 years ago. It crashed against an iceberg. The interesting thing is, in the beginning, people believed that this was a major crash, that it completely destroyed the hull of the product of the ship, and then the ship sank. Interestingly, was a few decades ago, the ship wreckage was found, and what actually we could see is that there was no single major crash that affected the ship, where there were a number of crashes. And what you can see in the picture is that this type of ship, by then, I'm not sure how the ships are built now, but was compartmentalized, which means those lines that you see, the black lines going upward, actually defined compartments, and the ship can sail even if water goes into one or two compartments. It's not a big issue. The problem was that the ship didn't had a major crash against the iceberg, but it had a number of minor crashes against the iceberg that broke the ship in a way that water could go into many single compartments, and then the ship could no longer sail, and it sank. And why is this metaphor important? So apologies that we went into sea issues, because once we have product market fit, sometimes we tend to think, well, we don't have a big problem, we shouldn't worry. But we don't need a big problem to sync an established product. The interesting thing that you see is that a number of small problems, you put them together, they become big enough, and they can become a huge challenge for the product manager. So when we work on going from 1 to 2, it doesn't have to be the case always, but it can be the case that you're not working on a big problem. And that was my problem initially. I said, well, where's the big problem? I don't see a big problem. Well, okay, there's no big problem, but there's lots of small problems, and then they add up to a lot. So that's something we have to be very, very wary of. These small problems that put together can actually cause the product to lose product market fit. So obviously, when this happens, we focus on a number of small problems. Now, the main issue is which problems should we focus on? We have to focus on the right problems. And typically, both identifying those right problems and defining them is more difficult or challenging than solving them. And the other interesting thing is, once the company has achieved product market fit, likely we will have quantitative and qualitative data, so we'll have more data. Competitive intel is really important, and we'll have competitors. If we have product market fit, there will be competition. And obviously we have to, very systematically identify and define these problems, and we need to solve them, of course. And that's why sometimes, I'm not sure if that's my personal opinion, but lots of people share it. In companies, big tech companies, product managers usually are extremely good at analyzing problems. They're stronger in analyzing problems than building solutions, because sometimes there's already a design system. There's many people, there's already many established practices to solve a problem. So what becomes more important is really identifying the problem really well. Whereas when you work on from going to 0 to 1, that sort of craft and building products is more important.
Yeah. So, Alejandro, just a question on that. So, going from 1 to 2, you mentioned, it's important to address those small problems because they're kind of eating away at your product, right? However, I find it does become difficult. You've got a relatively mature product to kind of pitch that towards your stakeholders, right? Your stakeholders, your C-suite is likely looking at the next big shiny thing, the next big opportunity, right? And here you are as a product manager, you're trying to bubble up these small problems, quote unquote small problems, and trying to bring them up, but you don't get much attention. So how would you deal with your stakeholders in that kind of a situation?
Yeah, that's such an excellent question, Lister, because it's about this topic. So let me respond to it first indirectly and then more directly.
Sure.
If the company has reached product market fit, usually it has the ability, or it can afford, a bunch of people. So not only product people, but also designers, research people, business development, engineering, etc. And so the one advantage over the previous situation is you don't have to do everything by yourself. You have people who are very talented and experienced in certain areas that will help you. The con is you have to persuade all those people, because usually not everybody is of the same opinion, and maybe I am the one who's wrong. So I also have to drop my ego and really, try to solve the problem instead of imposing my solution. So that's the first problem. The second problem is the executives. Of course, executives may dismiss these problems, And that can happen even more if it's a big company, because the problem I'm going to refer to is a huge retailer in Europe, so billions of dollars of revenue, and we were managing a payment product, but a payment product that was extremely important to the company. The payment product did 80% of the sales, and in terms of profits, much higher. And to us, the problem were an existential threat potentially to the retailer, whereas for people who are not in payments, they say, well, these payment folks are, just playing around. This is not an existential threat. It's just a payment issue. So to answer to your question, and this is an issue, a real issue that we faced, we really tried to, I think you have to take into account the culture of a company. So this company was very fact-driven. So we really tried to bring to the attention of leadership, using facts, using the language they usually understood, and pay attention to, outlining all of the reasons why we thought this is an emergency. And it's both gathering the facts and a bit of storytelling, but putting a very compelling argument in a way that you believe will be understood, to get buy-in, to address this issue. Now, not all company cultures will tolerate that. So this was a very open company, but it could happen that leadership says, "Look, it's not your decision. I say it's not a problem. It's not a problem." In that case, I'm not sure how much room you have to continue the conversation. It may depend on many factors. But even if the company's open to getting this type of bottoms-up suggestions, you have to do a lot of convincing. It's not that people will agree or give you buy-in for a major project, without high scrutiny. And sometimes it's not entirely rational, even if the company is data-driven.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, thank you.
No, most welcome. And here, what you see at the center of the slide is, those four arrows pointing at the same point, because we're talking about alignment. Alignment becomes extremely important. Being able to get everybody to converge on the right approach. Sometimes the problem is that for the sake of aligning, we end up converging on the wrong approach. Hopefully, this process will allow every one of us to see or to get some consensus on what the right approach is, and hopefully that's the right approach. But again, when you're going from 0 to 1, you have to do everything. Maybe you're not very talented at design, but you have to design. Doesn't matter. You have to do research. Here you have the benefit of having specialization of labor, but of course you have to convince a lot of people. And the other important thing is that this statement may not always be true, but you may not need to change everything, or you may not need to change this combination of pricing, promotion, distribution, which used to be called place. That's why it was the 4 Ps, and product. Maybe the problem may be isolated to one single element of the marketing mix, and could be the product, could be something else. And if product managers are working, it may be the product. Now let's see this other real example. So again, a payment product that allows buyers of fashion items to check out items without paying. And buyers have 15 days either to return the items or make a wire transfer. And the product has been extremely successful. Now, I also come from South America. So in South America, this type of payment method doesn't work. I mean, fraud would be rampant. It's a really an issue to control risk, because if people take the product without paying, you have to make sure that they come back and pay. But in certain markets, this works well. And it works well with certain products like fashion, because with fashion, you don't know the size and you don't know the style. So you may buy a pair of shoes and they don't fit. So people started buying 3 pairs instead of 1. maybe 30, 37, 37 and a half, 38. And then you don't have to pay for them. You just get the three of them, try them on. You decide, well, I'm 37 and a half. You just go to the post office, send the other products back, and you pay only for what you're going to keep. So this was extremely successful because the baskets tend to be bigger. Customer satisfaction goes up a lot. It's a way that many e-commerce players found to compete against brick and mortar retailers, where you can actually go to the store and try out something. And the problem was that there was a lot of competition. There was a very hot sector in many economies. And some competitors rose expectations. And people said, well, I don't want to wire the money after 14 years. It's awkward. Maybe I want to just click on a link and get all the details of my purchase and pay with any payment method that I want. Maybe I want some integration with the returns that I've done. So I return two shoes. I want to see where are they. I just pay for one shoe. I want help with calculating the amount that I want to pay, because maybe I was paying some extra fees. If I just wire the money, I can make all types of mistakes. And again, when you analyze all of these problems that were not necessarily big, they added up to a big issue. And when what was the alternative? Well, there were lots of competitors, and some of those competitors were payment-only products. Again, we were the payment product within one retailer, but if you let those guys into the retailer, then they start competing with you with a product that has been very, very profitable. So in terms of challenges and unknowns, the main challenge is, okay, are these three the main problems? Or maybe they're not the main problems. Maybe we solve them and nothing happens. Maybe there's something else going on with the product. Then what type of research should we do? What kind of combination of qualitative and quantitative research, should we do? What role is competition playing? Again, the one we discussed. How do we persuade other stakeholders? For instance, the team that was responsible for return to act, and how do we align internally? So different types of challenges and different nature, right? Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the differences and the summary. And I will leave time for questions. So I think it's good that we have time to discuss. So again, there's no silver bullet approach when it comes to product management. One thing that I believe I'm not going to talk about this, but usually one thing that is not properly accounted for in product management is company culture. Because you can have all the theory from the likes of Google, etc., but if that doesn't fit into your company culture, it will not work. I lived it. So company culture plays a big role. Then besides company culture, where you are in terms of the product lifecycle also plays a big role. Within the same company, what may work for going from 0 to 1 may not work for going from 1 to 2. And whether the company, is the distribution is sales-led, marketing-led, product-led, also plays a big role in how you solve the 0 to 1 challenge. And this is also true. This is true for product managers. It's true for founders. And one thing that one venture capitalist told me once is that the more hats a founder can wear, the more he can predict where that founder will stay with the company long term. Whereas those who cannot wear many hats usually tend to not stay with the company once the company goes past a certain milestone. And then if we use the table format to summarize the main differences, 0 to 1, we want to find a solution that sticks with customers, and that's the huge challenge. We don't know what that looks like. In 1 to 2, again, it doesn't have always to be this way, but usually the threat comes from the outside. It's a competitor, something happening, or a disruption happening in the marketplace, maybe some regulation change, whatever. The uncertainty is high to very high, 0 to 1, very high. In 1 to 2 is not as uncertain in that you can, if you analyze the problems well, it's not that difficult to determine looking forward what are the right solutions. But there's still uncertainty, obviously. If not, otherwise it wouldn't be a problem. When it comes to data and insights, you're going to use qualitative feedback mostly in 0 to 1. Maybe you'll have to extrapolate, make use of inference, whereas 1 to 2, you'll use far more quantitative data. If you hopefully you'll have it, and you can use more deductive reasoning. Then problem, it's a single problem from 0 to 1, could be multiple problems with smaller 1 to 2. The solution, again, is highly uncertain, it's overarching. It can encompass product distribution, promotion, pricing. And usually in 1 to 2, you have multiple problems, but the scope of each problem, the scope of the solution is much more reduced. The work you do, you multitask by nature in 0 to 1. In 1 to 2, more specialized, but the challenge is aligning. And then the focus on competition usually is low in 0 to 1 because most of the time you're creating something new. Whereas from 1 to 2, the focus on competition is high. Okay, so one quick thing, it's a bit related to what we're discussing. This is the tool that I'm building. You have the URL on top. And again, it's a tool to write some product management documents, and it's free. I happen to build it with no code, so anybody has questions about that, also happy to answer. And I'm gathering feedback. So what I'm interested in is finding people who are interested in using it. And I'm really committed to building functionality based on the feedback that I get from users. So if you believe this could help you, by all means, try it out. URL is on top, and I'm happy to get your feedback and build functionality based on your feedback. And then the next step is actually Q&A.
Okay, awesome, Alejandro. That was really great, really insightful. I really like the way you kind of simplified it, really laid that out. That was great. Looking for questions. We don't have a ton of questions that have come in. One question that I have though is, and maybe it's just kind of me. What I'm noticing right now is a lot of products that are coming up, they're not going from 0 to 1. They're attempting to go from 0 to 2. Right, directly. They're trying to skip that first step altogether. And maybe an example of that would be like, now every app is trying to be a super app. Every product is trying to be everything to everyone. I guess what kind of pitfalls do you see with something like that? And kind of like, what advice would you have for product managers that are part of those organizations that are from the get-go, they're saying, okay, well, we're not just trying to solve this one big problem, and then after solving that problem, we're trying to see, okay, well, what are adjacent markets that we can tap with the product that we've solved, or come up with some add-ons or new solutions to that. But they're saying, well, we want to be everything to everyone. Like, kind of, what are your thoughts on that? What advice would you give to product managers that are part of some organizations like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I did make the mistake to try to do many things. I think if you're a product manager working in that type of company, first you have to know it's going to be an extremely demanding environment. Going from 0 to 1 is hard enough. Going from 0 to 2 has to be extremely hard. The company should be extremely well funded, I should imagine, to have any prospects of success going from 0 to 2. So my advice would be make sure everything adds up. So the company has to have extremely most experienced leadership. It has to have very substantial funding. If it wants to go from 0 to 2, I would assume there's not a single person working on a problem. There are many teams working on different problems. So just make sure it's realistic and it's attainable, and that the company has a real shot at going from 0 to 2. As opposed to embarking on something that has no prospects of success. And also, to reply to that, I have a counterexample. So, for instance, some of the people gave me feedback to my product and say, well, it would be nice to export it to Google Docs, because I have an interface that looks a bit like Google Docs, but it would be nice to export it to Google Docs when I'm done with the document. And what I discussed that with somebody who said, well, but if you want to build a platform, maybe you don't want to do that. And to me, the answer is, if the users want to do it, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. If we want to build a platform, when we go from 1 to 2, now I don't worry about that. I'm just, worried enough about getting to 1. So if the users want it, if there's, if 3, 4, 5 people told you that they would like to export things to Google Docs, is that they're not viewing your app as something that does everything, but they're finding it useful for a certain thing, and then give them the tools to, leave your app when they need it.
Gotcha. Okay, so we have a related question from Qasim. He asks, how do you avoid market rush? Or, the way he's defined it, speed to market, essentially, like, how do you avoid going to market too fast with your product?
Yeah. I think you want to make sure you don't skip any steps that are important. So obviously you don't want to go too fast, you don't want to go too slow. So be mindful of the things that need to be in place before you can step on the gas, I would say. That's my response to Qasim. So if you have the sense that the company is rushing to go to market but doesn't have a thorough understanding of the problem, that's a red sign. So go back, understand the problem really well. If you get a sense that the company wants to start investing in paid ads, but it still doesn't have a stable user base, that's another sign. You may say, well, look, we need to go through the steps. So I guess the answer is, well, be mindful of the steps you have to go through and try not to skip them. And if you see that the company is skipping them, just let your voice be heard, that you believe there's this and that risk because we're skipping some very important steps.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Qasim, for the question. Thank you, Alejandro, for the response. I don't think there are any other further questions, but if there are, you guys can reach out to Alejandro. Do check out the product that he talked about, Produkando, and the link. We're a great product community. We're trying to help other product managers as well. We're building products, so do check that out. Alejandro, on behalf of our product community and the Product Soch team, thank you so much. That was a super informative session. We'd love to have you join us again sometime on another topic in the near future. Just a couple of quick announcements before we end. So we've got some great news. Our in-person Soch cafes have been scheduled for all 3 cities now. And yes, we're including Lahore this time. So Soch Cafe Islamabad is happening at Imamba on Wednesday, March 8th at 7 p.m. Soch Cafe Karachi is happening on March 9th at 7 p.m. at Baikia head office. And then Soch Cafe Lahore is happening at Mindstorm Studios on Friday, 10th of March. Again at 7 p.m. So make sure to go to our LinkedIn page to register, and you can get the full details there as well, including the addresses of those locations. Also, check out our latest episode of our Sochcast podcast, where we had Yasser Bashir talking about tech entrepreneurship in Pakistan. Yasser is the co-founder and CEO of RBSoft, which is one of the largest software companies in Pakistan. You can find that on our YouTube channel, Google Podcast, and of course, Spotify. So again, thank you so much, Alejandro, and to all of you for joining us, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Amna. Mudasir, it was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.